There are still a lot more questions than answers in Vancouver right now as they try to right the ship. Meanwhile, some bad blood with McDavid and the Oilers over the weekend. We've got all that and more coming up next on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here, and welcome everybody to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. It's my pleasure to welcome back to the show the co-host of Locked On Canucks, Trevor Beggs. And Trevor, it's not dull following the Vancouver Canucks right now, but more trade rumors, more rumors of players who aren't getting along, who may not want to be there. What's going on in Vancouver?
I don't get it, Gil. Vancouver is one of the most beautiful cities in the world.
Yes.
Who wouldn't want to live here, man? Come
Yes.
on. I had one day, this is a few years back, where I was going to go snowboarding, and then instead we went to the beach instead. Like, how many places in the world can you do that? Why is everyone so upset being in Vancouver? But like you alluded to, it's, rumors coming out of the yin-yang here. And, it is a hockey hotbed, and a lot of the insiders are glued into Vancouver. And, again, all the reports of feud and tension and trade rumors. I mean, it's been a tumultuous season here for sure. And of course, Elliot Friedman reporting that, Miller maybe wasn't going to play against the Oilers on Saturday. He does play, picks up a couple assists, gets line match against McDavid, and actually has a pretty good game overall. Brock Boeser has commented on his own, the possibility of him being traded. Elias Pettersson apparently wants to stay. But again, we got a pretty bold management team here in Patrick Oviedo and Jim Rutherford. So unless this team turns it around, and I'm not necessarily buying it after one win against the Edmonton Oilers at the end of the road trip, I really do think anything's on the table right now.
Talk to me about that game against the Oilers. Connor McDavid, a little questionable hit there. What happened, and do you expect that there will be a possible suspension here?
I get the sense that there's going to be a suspension because I already think there's some heat on McDavid, right? He gets fined, pennies according to what he makes annually for the elbow on Marcus Johansson there. But I mean, I'm a big Connor Garland fan, and he definitely, for being the smallest forward on paper in the NHL, he does a hell of a job of getting under guys' skin. And, Ray Ferraro said it correctly on the Hockey Day in Canada broadcast up here in Canada. That Garland probably could have gotten called for 3 penalties on that play, like leg locking McDavid and interfering with him. But that doesn't really excuse you to cross-check a guy in the face. So I know I see some old hockey meatheads saying like, there's something wrong with it. Let him do it. Sure, let him do it, but I think he should be suspended for it. And of course, Tyler Myers should probably be suspended too. I mean, he cross-checked Bouchard in the face away from the play. Not as much attention on that, but both plays were pretty much identical. I'm really curious to see if they actually have the cojones to suspend McDavid. If they don't, it's a little bit like Patrick Mahomes in the NFL, right? We all saw, or for those who follow the NFL, we saw him get some preferential treatment over the weekend as well. So, I honestly, I'm leaning toward the NHL suspending McDavid. I think they will do it. But if they don't, I think that certainly says something about stars getting preferential treatment.
This team right now is on the outside looking in as far as the playoffs are concerned. What do they need to do most to get back to playing consistent hockey and righting the ship? And is it as simple as can't they all just get along?
Yeah, that would be the easiest thing, Gil, honestly. And, I just stepping aside from that, I think just JT Miller and Elias Pettersson at the top of the lineup. I did see a stat today that Quinn Hughes is on pace for 100 points. We all know that. He's having a Hart Trophy-like season. They are wasting a legendary season from Quinn Hughes here. I mean, he gets 2 of the Canucks' 3 goals last night, including the game winner. He is the heart and soul of the Vancouver Canucks. But this team, when they were successful last year, when they were a Stanley Cup contender, when they were one of the best teams in the league, it was Miller, it was Pettersson, it was Boeser, it was Demko, it was Hronek, it was Hughes. And this year, it really only seems like it's Hughes. Now, granted, Demko and Hronek have dealt with injuries. Boeser's dealt with injury a little bit as well. But, really, I think it falls on Miller and Pettersson right now. I mean, those guys are both on pace, I believe, for less than 60 points. I think over an 82-game stretch, they'd be on pace for more. But these are players who have hit 100 points recently in the NHL. You're paying these guys a lot of money, and if they are going to be second liners instead of superstars, then this Canucks team is not going to make much noise. Now, I do hold out some hope that they can turn things around in some way, shape, or form. Maybe it's just my stubborn Canuck fan belief, but it's worked with these guys on the team before. So I do have a hard time believing that, it's just all dead in the water now and that the window's closed. But that being said, I mean, we're pretty much pushing a full calendar year of Pettersson looking like a second liner instead of a superstar. JT Miller has not looked right all season long. He's scored on an NHL goalie once since October. That's a crazy stat. I mean, it happened twice in the same game on Sam Montembeault in Montreal. But he just has not scored at all. His last goal, aside from scoring on Sam Montembeault here in January, was on October 26th on Tristan Jarry, who is not even with the Pittsburgh Penguins anymore. So It really just started with the superstars. This team does need another defenseman. It is a brutal defense core aside from Hughes and Hronek. So I don't know if trading one of the stars is the answer to make that happen. But long term, this team, even if Miller and Pettersson turn it around, I don't think they're competing for a Stanley Cup unless they add another defenseman.
Let's talk a little bit about some good news. How about Jake DeBrusk? He's leading the team in goals. Give me something happy here.
Oh, man. I mean, he is leading the team in goals, and I'll pat myself on the back a little bit because that was one of my preseason predictions on Locked On Canucks, is that Jake DeBrusk and not Brock Boeser would lead the team in scoring. Now, with Jake DeBrusk, though, he has been hot and cold, and he's gone a bit cold right now. And, again, in terms of our listeners and the comments we get on the show, so much vitriol towards Elias Pettersson. But right now he is on a line with Jake DeBrusk and Brock Boeser. And those guys, I believe, especially if you watch, the Edmonton game over again, Pettersson was making things happen along the boards. This defensive game was there, but I think Boeser and DeBrusk are kind of letting him down a bit right now. And Jake DeBrusk, again, having a good season. And Gil, I'm feeling so negative right now, but Jake DeBrusk only has 1 goal and one assist over his last 10 games. He was running really hot there in November and December, but he's definitely cooled down a bit. But this has been Jake DeBrusk throughout his whole NHL career, right? Really nice to see him again on pace for 30 plus goals, 50 plus points. He's doing everything that you ask for a guy making 5.5, but the inconsistencies and how he can be a goal per game for a 10-game stretch and then have 2 points in 10 games. I mean, that has followed him to Vancouver here.
What do you expect this team to do at the trade deadline? It's 6 weeks away. You got like 10 days off in the middle for the Four Nations tournament. There's so many possibilities here. What do you think they need to do, and what do you think they will do?
That's a tough question, Gil, honestly. And it depends how the team performs. I think Albion and Rutherford in the past, if the team is playing well, they've rewarded the team for their good performance. But we just haven't seen that form yet this season. I mean, they've been blown out on numerous occasions. Aside from Edmonton last night, they've been, they've started slow in almost every one of their games. It is hard to envision Albion and Rutherford making a big deal to add to this team right now. It does feel right now, if they make a big deal, it's trading Miller or Boeser, and I think what's less likely is trading Elias Pettersson. And Brock Boeser right now, and he talked to Ian McIntyre from Sportsnet a couple of days ago, and he said that he could see how he would be an easy guy to trade as a UFA. And it's a big question for the Vancouver Canucks, because if this team isn't contending for a Stanley Cup and they do need a bit of a retool, it's fair to wonder if the Canucks should go out and pay Brock Boeser $8+ million per season. Again, you look at his player value according to The Athletic, he's valued right around a $6.5 million player, which is what he's making in Vancouver. So is Brock Boeser the guy that gets you a top 4 defenseman? Do you re-sign him? I think that is, aside from figuring out this whole Miller Pettersson thing and what to do with those guys, figuring out what to do with Brock Boeser is a massive decision for the Vancouver Canucks.
This is a team and a franchise at a crossroads right now. I know it's going to be a very interesting second half of the season. Trevor, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
You know what? Sports is all about escapism, Gil. You know, that's why we're doing this. Locked on NHL, Locked on Islanders, Locked on Canucks. And by God, if you're having a bad day or you need some escapism, tune into Locked on Canucks, because it's never a dull moment in Vancouver,
That's
like
right.
you said. And a lot of people like to just laugh at the Vancouver Canucks. And we like to, if you want to hear a couple of angry Canuck fans talking about the dysfunction of their team, my co-host Kyle and I, we got you covered on Locked on Canucks. But yeah, you can find Locked on Canucks on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find me on Twitter at Trev Beggs. You can find my co-host Kyle Bowen on Instagram at Kyle Bowen, BHAWAN.
All right, Trevor, thanks so much. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NHL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win that first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. And hockey fans, you can also use your knowledge of hockey and your favorite team to find exciting betting opportunities on FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League.